Open RAN and the exciting opportunities it brings for women in engineering. As mentioned, my name is Josil Reyes. I'm an assistant professor at UST Electronics Engineering Department. Upon looking at the participants, I actually noticed that some of my students are here. So it's good to see you here. And I believe a lot of you probably already know some of the topics that I'll cover later, since this Open RAN is already incorporated in the curriculum. And also, I'm also part of the Asia Open RAN Academy as one of the course co-creators. So I'm very fortunate to see the launch of the academy since like mid 2022, and then now it's really growing really fast. And now we're also joining forces together with IEEE Women in Engineering. Okay, so my discussion, or rather my talk, will be focused more on the Open RAN and also some career opportunities, not only for women, but can also be applied to everyone. Okay, so what are the contents of my presentation? First is just a description of what is Open RAN, especially if you're new to this webinar or you're new to Asia Open RAN Academy, you probably haven't heard about it. So I'll give you an introduction on this, but don't worry, I will not discuss a lot of the details. Maybe you can join the webinar series so that you can really see the technicalities of it later. And then I'll also present some women in Open RAN who has really led various fields or various companies, organizations, and really push towards the inclusion of Open RAN in the different communities. And then finally, some Open RAN opportunities. Okay, so but before I start, I wanted to ask first our participants, can you give us a thumbs up or any reaction if you're already familiar with Open RAN? Oh, ano ba yung Open RAN? Ano ba yung RAN? Can you give me a thumbs up? Teka, hindi ko alam kung kita ba yung I hope a lot of you are, yeah, okay, I see it now. Oh, okay, I hope a lot of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, that's okay, because this is the purpose of this session, to be introduced to the concept of Open RAN and what are the possible opportunities for Open RAN. Okay, so of course, every one of us is familiar with the mobile network coverages because we use our phones every day, our laptops, tablets, anything, because we want to be connected to everyone on the internet. If you are familiar, we have a lot of different radio access networks or different cellular technologies now in the Philippines. It first started with, actually, there is 1G, but it's no longer operational. So we are now only operating 2G, 3G, 4G, and even 4G plus, and then now 5G. So if you go to this website, if you search for NPerf mobile signal, you can select there the different operators, usually major operators of mobile networks, and then see where they are situated, where their base stations are, where their when you say base stations, those are the high antenna towers, like tall antenna towers, sometimes in the buildings, sometimes in the fields. And it depends on those base stations that we can be able to access the mobile network and be able to text, call, or send a message in the messenger. Okay, if you go there, you will find different cities all over the Philippines, and you'll see that there are a lot of radio stations or base stations. Some are operating in a lower cellular network, while some are now already powered by 5G. So the 5G ones are those violet or purple ones. Just take note that majority of the callers are on the roads because when they gather this data, the engineers are moving in vehicles, and of course they can only take note of the points. But in reality, the mobile network, or rather the radio signals are moving in across all directions. Okay, but this is an interesting idea because there's already some 5G base stations in the Philippines, and hopefully in the future it will increase more. Perhaps the operators will be able to explain more on where they are planning to um, construct more base stations. Okay, so this is in Manila. A lot of concentration is in Manila. also in Cebu and in Davao. Maybe this network coverage will change. Maybe next year it will have a um different figure. Okay, so I've already mentioned some of the cellular network technologies like 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. A 4G plus is like pre-5G kind of technology. And probably some of you may no longer remember 1G or even 2G, but I was able to experience 2G, or rather the start of 2G, since I was born before it. Anyway, what is the difference among the different cellular networks? It's mostly the evolution across from the initial state of analog phones, wherein you can just call people using these brick phones. It's really a huge phone, and the only purpose is just to call other people there. Eventually, they improve it, and the calls are now digitized, which means that when it's digital, you can apply some other techniques, algorithms, and mostly for security purposes. Because in the analog era, if you know the frequency, you can just tap and listen to the conversation. But in the 2G, you can have some encryption and, of course, kind of protect yourself from unintended listeners. Okay, so maybe some of you already had this phone as one of their first few phones. It's really a strong phone. I think 3310. And then later, eventually, there are further improvements to this, not only just digital calls and SMS, but also now the introduction of mobile data. So you can see here that the years are every decade there is a new cellular generation, because the study of cellular networks is continuously continuous. Okay, and then the names here on the top, you don't worry, you will not be quizzed on the names of these cellular generations, but these are the different names of the technologies. Okay, so for 4G, that's what we're experiencing right now. There are, of course, better access to data and more massive communications, more number of devices. It's also called LTE, or long-term evolution. And now the rollout of 5G already started, even though right now in the Philippines, we're just on the non-standalone, meaning the 5G network is still dependent on the 4G network, but eventually it will be a standalone system that will have its own core network architecture and things like that. Okay, so now it will also bring a lot more things into the system, the ecosystem, the phones, even cars, eventually, virtual reality. Okay, so that means if every decade there is a new network, therefore there will eventually be a 6G. But right now it's still under research. Hopefully they will be able to roll it out by 2030. So if you're interested to knowing more about this, you can search the 3GPP website. They're the organizations in charge of developing and managing the standards for cellular networks. Okay, so yeah, I don't have any pictures here yet because they're still under research. And what I believe is they are focusing more on really immersive communications and having a lot more connections. Okay, so how does it relate to Open RAN? So the cellular network is actually composed of different components, as you can see on this slide. The wireless telecommunication systems include a core network. When you say a core network, this includes a lot of devices trying to interconnect different countries, different service providers, like maybe PLDT, Smart, Globe, and other local telcos, trying to connect also to other telcos outside of the Philippines. And those are they usually have some intermediary devices, like network devices, like routers, switches, and things like that. And of course, to reach the users, there are different components across all the locations, which we call the radio access network. This is usually what you have seen earlier in the mobile network coverage. We have radio access networks, or more commonly known as base stations, and they provide the connection to the user equipment, or just the mobile devices, the phones, and other devices that has some connections or some cellular network interface card. Okay, notice that this is a wireless connection, which means that the antennas can communicate to a lot of different user equipment wirelessly. But the connection between the RAN and the core network may be wireless or maybe fixed. No? As you can see here, microwave frequencies. If you're not familiar with microwave frequencies, um, they are high frequency radio signals that you can sometimes see in top of the buildings, the circular dishes that you you may find on top of the buildings. Then there are fiber optic connections on the underwater cables or underwater or areas, and of course satellite. Okay, so the focus of Open RAN is actually on this aspect, the radio access network. Since there is a lot of need to have RAN in different places, different geographical locations, they will provide the mobile device, the users to access to the internet. Without it, of course, it will be difficult for the user to connect to the internet and have access to all the digital information. Okay, so RAN, if the acronym means radio access network, and it provides the network coverage because it is connecting the user to the core network and to the internet eventually. It is the part of the cellular network that is nearest the subscribers, and it is distributed across various places. Usually there are thousands or maybe more RAN elements in the different parts of the world. The RAN involves a lot of devices, which I will not discuss, so don't worry. They are like, there are baseband units, radio units, and all of them have different functions. Okay, and in the different cellular technologies, there are various RAN names. They just vary the name because they want to distinguish the different parts across different generations. So notice there are just different names for the radio access networks, but all of them have the same purpose of connecting the end users to the core network and eventually, of course, to the internet. Okay, so how does this relate again to Open RAN? Initially, the RAN, the traditional RAN, is where the components are co-located on the same site, which means if you have a base station, you have your baseband unit at the bottom and then the radio unit on top. But eventually it can be separated. Why do you need to separate it or disaggregate it? The main reason is so that you can properly allocate resources. Baka mas maging efficient yung paggamit ng mga devices if you assign it to manage a lot of different base stations. But that is traditional RAN. Eventually, they had this concept of centralized RAN, wherein the baseband units are pooled in a centralized location for easy management and of course more efficient utilization of resources, no? Para hindi masyado magastos, no? If one baseband unit is just managing one radio unit, then you may need to buy another one just for another base station. But if you pool it together, it will be somehow more cost effective and you're utilizing your resources more efficient. And then eventually, because of virtualization, a lot of course the technology has improved a lot. Some of the devices or some of the functions of the devices can now be virtualized, meaning that you don't need to have a dedicated device just to function a specific, just to have the specific function, but rather you can have like a generic device and then the function is virtualized on top of it. So you can imagine if you're a gamer, sometimes there are gaming console that is really the specific for a particular set of games, but there are ways to use emulators, so somehow it is virtualized in that case. You can use emulators to play on your in your generic mobile device or maybe generic desktop computer. So the same goes for this one. Some of the functions of the RAN are virtualized and may just run on commercial off-the-shelf servers. But this virtualized RAN, is not yet open. What do we mean by not yet open? Some of the devices and even the interfaces are proprietary, which means it is vendor specific. No? If you need to buy a new device or a new baseband unit, you need to replace all the other components. You need to replace the interface, you need to replace the remote radio unit, and that would be quite expensive, of course, in the long run. So this is why there is a move towards the open radio access network to allow interoperability and, of course, achieve more cost-effective cellular networks. And if the capex or capital expenditure is cheaper, then the mobile operators will have more incentive to expand their coverage, and therefore more end users will be connected. Okay, so that is Open RAN. All the components are open. They are just on commercial off-the-shelf servers, and the functions may be virtualized, and even the interface is open. So if you buy something, buy a baseband unit from one vendor, you buy an interface from another vendor, or a remote radio unit from another vendor, you should be able to use them together. Just need to perform some testing. If they follow the same procedure or same standards, then they should be able to interoperate. Yes. And this is just the summary of all that what I have discussed. This is how the different RANs are interconnected. Some in the traditional RAN, everything is proprietary, even in centralized RAN. In virtualized RAN, there is a move towards openness, but eventually for Open RAN, all the hardware components are open. The challenge now is to make your software side more unique, more innovative, so that the providers, so the end users will go to you to purchase your software. But everything will be open: the hardware, the software defined radio, the server, and the interface. So to summarize, the Open RAN is the move or the initiative to move from the proprietary radio access networks to open radio access networks, wherein a lot of the hardware are now open. And then if it is open, you can just mix and match different vendor devices, no? And make sure that they are interoperable. And since the functions may be virtualized, we can now introduce some intelligence into it. If you're familiar with machine learning, AI, you can incorporate some intelligence, like they can try to monitor the network utilization, or maybe monitor the prediction of the traffic and things like that. So this is the benefits of Open RAN. And this is the current move of a lot of the telco, the vendors, even those manufacturers of these devices. Okay, so who are the key groups or ecosystems under Open RAN? We have the Telecom Infra Project. They are in charge of, they are actually founded by Facebook or Meta, and they're focused more on engineering side. And they are included they created their own community labs wherein they tested and deployed Open RAN. And then there is also ORAN Alliance. This was formed to promote the purpose of open and intelligent RAN. And it was like a merger between two different major groups for Open RAN. And then there are other key groups, operators, vendors. Mostly anyone who is in the telco field are probably part of this Open RAN ecosystem. Okay, even in the Philippines, the major telco providers are actually already part. They're having their testing and their research more on this, so that they will be able to deploy Open RAN in the Philippines. So right now there is only one test yet, a testing prototype. It's not yet deployed. It was in the proof of concept phase. Okay, so to connect to that, not only key organizations, but there are also women in Open RAN in various organizations, groups. In Telecom Infra Project, you can see that the leadership, the chief marketing officer and the head of operations are women. And they are also promoting diversity, wherein they have this TIP diversity committee to be able to listen to a lot of voices from women. And of course, that would drive more innovation, and of course, be able to have a safe space. Aside from TIP, there are also women in the board members of ORAN Alliance. The ORAN Alliance is composed of various vendors, operators. That's why you'll notice here there's a China Mobile, it's a telco, also Orange in France, and Vodafone is a British telco company operating in Europe. And of course, I won't forget there are also women in Asia Open RAN Academy. These are Maricor, Tony, and Zelina. Maricor is the vice chair and of IORA and the founding president of PhilNITS. No? PhilNITS is Philippine National IT Standards Foundation. They're mostly focused on implementing certification program for IT professionals in the Philippines. And then Tony Torres, executive director of IORA. I believe she's the one managing or maybe not, or usually someone usually manages the Asia Open RAN Academy account, and then also the former project manager from DICT or Department of Information and Communications Technology. And also, you already know Jelina Tetangco. She's the enrichment program designer from Open RAN, from IORA, and also a research specialist, sorry for the typo, from DOST ASTI or Advanced Science and Technology Institute. Okay, other women in IORA is yours truly. So I already introduced myself. So I'll proceed to Ms. Grace Mirandilla Santos, also one of the course co-creator of Asia Open RAN Academy. You'll be hearing more about her work later. She's also the lead researcher in the Asia Foundation, which is also I believe a nonprofit organization more on improving the lives across Asia. And finally, our digital Lola, Maria Bibi. She's the advisor to and consultant to Asia Open RAN Academy and also president of Kaisipan Incorporated. So Kaisipan is also a nonprofit that is focusing on fostering digital capabilities in the Philippines. Okay, so what are the open RAN opportunities? So there are a lot of opportunities here since, as I mentioned, the cellular network is really like every decade there's a new generation. So that's why there will always be some innovation, some new technologies to be rolled out. So these are just some of the opportunities here. You can check it out in the source link below. So we have equipment and infrastructure providers, network integrators and providers, managed services, software development and virtualization. If you're interested in development, being a developer or being a part of a cloud engineering, also consulting and training, testing and validation, especially for ensuring that the devices are interoperable, since the devices, the interfaces may be from different vendors, different manufacturers. So it's important to test and validate that the operation is still is going smoothly. And then investment and funding for those who want to expand, since there will be a more cost-effective telco ecosystem. Maybe it will promote more business to start their own radio access networks. And finally, research and development, ecosystem support, and collaboration. Okay, so what are some IORA opportunities? So first and foremost is skills development, which was mentioned earlier by Jelina. So we have some courses already deployed in the Rakuten Learning Hub, one of our partners as well in IORA. So these are just some of the titles. And the one on the top, these 6 courses here are foundational courses. And then at the bottom, we have the basic and advanced Open RAN courses. So I won't go into detail on these topics, but yeah, you can see that the IORA team already prepared a lot of the training materials and of course to be able to build capacity in the Philippines and also eventually in the Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so another set of opportunities in IORA is for career advancement. So if you are trained for Asia, for Open RAN, you'll have a lot more opportunities as well. Since, of course, this is still part of the telecoms community, so you'll have some roles like this, and then for cloud and virtualization, and then software development, data science, and of course, education. How about the IORA opportunities for women empowerment? So it's important also for women to participate in Open RAN and IORA in general, so that we can enable diverse voices. And if we are diverse, we'll be able to promote inclusivity, as emphasized by Maria earlier in her opening in her introduction. And this is critical eventually to the legal, economic, and decision-making process or aspects. And if you're part of IORA or Age of Open RAN, then you can be able to shape the direction of Open RAN adoption in the Philippines and eventually in the Indo-Pacific region. So if you want to know more about Age Open RAN, you can just go to this website. You'll see that the different updates from Age Open RAN are already posted there and shared. Okay, so that's it for my talk. I hope that I was able to give you a good overview of Open RAN and also the career opportunities for women.